Morning to the members of the media. Thanks for joining us here at our MSJ party headquarters for this media conference this morning. First, I want to extend on behalf of the MSJ our greetings and solidarity with members of the Spiritual Shouter Baptist faith community who tomorrow will be celebrating the 64th anniversary of the repeal of the Shouter Prohibition Ordinance, that odious piece of colonial legislation that was passed in 1917, which resulted in the prosecution and persecution of members of the Spiritual Shouter Baptist faith in Trinidad and Tobago. Tomorrow they have their holiday commemorating, their Liberation Day holiday commemorating the end of that odious piece of legislation, and we extend greetings to them and congratulate the members of the Spiritual Shouter Baptist faith for their tremendous contribution to the development of Trinidad and Tobago. As I said yesterday at the opening of the Cuba de Raya Buzz Butler Village here in San Fernando at Harris Promenade, which village is organized annually by members of the faith, the Shouter Baptist community has contributed immensely in very many ways to the development and growth of Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, notable persons have contributed both to the religious activity as well as the struggle for social justice, most notably, of course, Cuba de Raya Buzz Butler himself, a member of that faith. I also want to extend on behalf of the party greetings to the entire Christian community. Today, of course, is Palm Sunday, which starts Holy Week, this week being the most important period in the Christian calendar. Friday coming is Good Friday, and a week today is Easter Sunday. Good Friday, of course, marks the crucifixion of Christ, and Easter Sunday, the resurrection, which are central to the tenets of the Christian faith, and so we extend our greetings to all the members of the Christian community at this time. There are a number of major issues in front of Trinidad and Tobago. One, of course, I will speak at some length on, but there's another one, and we will issue a more detailed media release in a day or two, which is the question of CLICO. Very concerned about the statement made by the governor of the central bank yesterday at a press conference when he announced the sale of a number of assets which are currently owned by CLICO, and then the eventual sale of CLICO itself. We're very concerned about this development because, of course, CLICO is the country's first indigenous insurance company and grew to be the largest insurance company, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but the Caribbean. And a lot of ordinary citizens of this country invested in CLICO, and to see indigenous assets being sold out or lost to, in many cases, foreign owners and so on, and in some cases, because there's a lack of transparency, maybe to favored big capital locally, is really a further dispossession of the patrimony and assets of Trinidad and Tobago, of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we're going to issue a more detailed statement on that. It is not only the interests of those who have policies. We want to ensure that the policy holders' interests are secured, but the broader national interest must also be secured. And we have no trust and confidence, absolutely no trust and confidence in the governor of the central bank, who seems to be overseeing this particular asset sale. And as for the government, they obviously would like to get some cash coming back in to finance the fiscal deficit and also to have plenty of money to spend for the upcoming general elections. And so we have no confidence either that the cabinet or the Minister of Finance has taken the decision that is in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago, but we'll issue a more detailed statement on this in the coming days. The conference this morning is the cesspit into which the politics of Trinidad and Tobago has clearly sunk and descended into. The statement on Wednesday by Mrs. Vernella Allen Toppin in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago was a new low amongst many lows in the history of the politics, recent politics of our country. We are all aware of what she said, and I will not repeat what she said in Parliament. It must be noted, however, that her statement and other statements made in the Parliament on that day took place just hours after the second launch, public launch, of the Code of Ethical Political Conduct and the launch, for the first time, publicly, of the Council for Responsible Political Behavior. I myself attended that event at the Hilton on Wednesday morning at 11 a.m. This is the code that was launched on that day, and members of the council, which is chaired by Dr. Bishnu Raghunath of the University of the West Indies, and which has a number of eminent persons on it. Representatives of political parties, including the chairman of the UNC, Ms. Khadija Amin, the political leader of the COP, Mr. Prakash Ramadar, signed in the public glare once again, for the second time, the Code of Ethical Political Conduct, it having been signed some months ago. I myself signed on behalf of the MSJ. And both the COP and UNC leaders, in responding to the media after the launch, in an informal, impromptu media conference, if you wish, stated that their parties would uphold the best ethical practices and would stand by what they signed in terms of this code, and so on and so on, and then they washed their mouth on other political parties and accused others of being guilty. When I spoke, I said that all of them need to take the proverbial beam or big plank out of their eyes before they try to take the splinter or the mote out of someone else's eye. And quite clearly, all the traditional parties have been guilty of violating various terms of this Code of Ethical Political Conduct. But what is worse is what happened just hours after it was launched, or relaunched, if you wish, and that is what took place in Parliament that Wednesday afternoon, last Wednesday afternoon. And it is not only Mrs. Vernella Allen Toppin who must be condemned outright. The entire government of Trinidad and Tobago stands condemned. We say so without fear of contradiction because in yesterday's Guardian newspaper, and this has not been refuted in any of today's press, Dr. Moonilal is quoted as saying, "I sanctioned Vernella's statement as the leader of government business. And therefore, as leader of government business in the House, all the members of Parliament on the government side, all, Prakash Ramadar, leader of the COP, cannot exculpate himself with any platitudinous statements. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago cannot excuse herself and say she was not in the Parliament chamber when it happened. If she was not in the Parliament chamber when it happened, then when she returned to the Parliament chamber, she should have immediately gotten up and spoken and condemned and disassociated herself with Mrs. Allen Toppin's statement. She did not do so. All of the members of the UNC and the COP, because I saw their press release issued yesterday, are engaged in what is essentially waffling, and they're trying to explain away, rationalize, excuse, and all kinds of other activities, except to, as in Mrs. Toppin's own words, fess up, man up. All of them need to fess up, man up or woman up, and say to Trinidad and Tobago that they did grievous harm, not only to the Parliament, and I'll come back to that, but they did grievous harm to wives, mothers, daughters, and so on, who have been victims of rape, as well as they have done grievous harm in terms of quite clearly stating untruths before the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. So the leader of government business said that it was sanctioned by him. There was clearly some parliamentary caucus. Some people are trying to pull themselves out. None of them can pull themselves out. Whether they were in the caucus or not in the caucus, it was a clearly agreed upon strategy by the government, UNC government, in this parliamentary debate. Nothing can get away from that fact. And as a clearly organized, preconceived strategy, they knew what was going to be said, they sanctioned it, and now they're trying to excuse it away. We want to condemn not just Mrs. Allen Toppin for her statement. Clearly she has already been condemned, and we join condemnation of that and of her. But more particularly, we wish to condemn the UNC government for its strategy of engaging in what could only be the lowest of the low in terms of cesspit or cesspool. To condemn politics is the defiling of the nation's parliament. The nation's parliament was defiled last Wednesday. It has been brought into disrepute before, but disrepute is too soft a word. It was defiled on Wednesday because the parliament is the national institution in which representatives of the citizens of this country are supposed to discuss, debate, and pass legislation that would ensure the proper functioning of the country, good governance, and therefore represent the social contract between state and the people. The Parliament is also supposed to debate and discuss important policy issues related to economic and social and political matters that affect all citizens of this country. What took place in Parliament on Wednesday cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, not even the most fanciful Steven Spielberg science fiction, could you stretch the imagination to connect what took place in the Parliament on Wednesday with the discussion and debate of important policy issues or far less legislation that impact on the governance of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, in that way, the Parliament was defiled, and it demonstrates yet again that the Speaker of the House failed to conduct the affairs of the House in accordance with what the House of Representatives and the Parliament is supposed to be engaged in. In this regard as well, it confirms or reconfirms in the view of the MSJ the fact that the institutions of our state have collapsed. The Parliament, which is, as I said, supposed to deal with laws and policy and so on in the interests of citizens, has collapsed because it is not doing those things. And therefore, we are saying this is yet another example, as the Integrity Commission has collapsed and does not deliver integrity in public life. The justice system has collapsed and does not deliver justice, whether to victim or accused. The economic system has collapsed in terms of not delivering fairness and justice to all citizens and working people and farmers and so on. The political system of the cabinet has collapsed because the cabinet is being used more as a means of personal enrichment and entrenching the power of those who are friends and family of the ruling party, rather than taking decisions in the interests of the entire Trinidad and Tobago. And the Parliament has collapsed. Established by the Republican Constitution of 1976, the entire system has collapsed, and this is why we are saying that the country needs a second republic. And the elections of 2015, quite frankly, given the nature of the two traditional parties, will not see us moving towards a second republic. It will simply see the continuation of the First Republic. And we again say that citizens need, with all of these examples and experiences before us of the collapse of the institutions, of the nature of the traditional political parties, of their political conduct and behavior, we need citizens to have a revolution in mind and to recognize that we need to break free of the politics of race, of religion, of gender, of age, of geography, and so on, and to recognize the need to bring into being the Second Republic. Questions? What he said, what I'm referring to the press report in yesterday's Guardian, right? And I trust that the press report is accurate. I'm quoting here. On Thursday, Communication Minister Vasant Bharat said Alan Toppin's statements might have been discussed by government members prior to delivery. Works Minister Suraj Ramachan said he was not among those present at that discussion. Yesterday, however, Munilal said he, as PP House leader, had allowed her to proceed with the matters she had planned to raise. He also said the Prime Minister was not part of the discussion. Okay? So clearly there was a discussion. We don't know who was present. Quite frankly, we don't care who was present. All of them are guilty by implication because it was sanctioned by the leader of government business in the House. All of them are guilty, Prime Minister included, and the buck stops with the Prime Minister on this one. Parliamentary caucuses operate.
Dr. Munilal's government business spokesperson said that he agreed with Toppin's statement. He also said that Toppin never called any name and was the express reality was the one who named these people.
The motion, Ivan, before the Parliament was not dealing with some unnamed person who may have lived in Charlottesville and may have been a teacher and so on and so on. The motion was dealing specifically with the conduct of the leader of the opposition. It was a specific motion. And it was very clear what Mrs. Aline Toppin was saying. The implications were as clear as the bright sun shining outside this morning. And I'm assuring members of the public, the sun is shining very brightly at the moment in San Fernando.
So would you say that this is a strategy that backfired? This is going to bring about the demise of this government?
I do agree that it is a strategy that backfired. That instead of Dr. Rowley being the one who has something to answer, it is now the government that has something to answer and to defend. It clearly backfired. But it is not, let me put it the other way around. It is yet another example of why this government is unfit. The persons in this government are unfit to hold high political office because their judgment is awful. They will do anything in order to win an election, and including bribery, intimidation, trying to dismiss people, discriminating, and going into Parliament and defiling the Parliament.
People seem to not be following the voluntary compliance with the code, right? Do you think the time is right now for there to be some kind of mandatory compliance?
It would be ideal to have a mandatory compliance. Certainly, I'm sure there'll be complaints brought before the Council for Responsible Political Behavior about statements that have been made, and the Council will have to make a statement as to whether, in their view, those statements were contrary to the code. Now, they can't sanction, but a public statement by the Council stating that some statement or some activity did not or was not in compliance with the code would send a clear signal.